Hello everyone, and welcome to our Click and Chat for club members. So we've got SAIM with us today, who run a community darkroom in London. I'm Karen, marketing manager at Analogue Wonderland. We've also got Amy here.
I'm the content and community marketing manager at Analogue Wonderland.
We've also got Jacko and Adrian from SAIM with us. So I don't know if you both want to do a little introduction about yourselves as well, just so people know who you are before we get into SAIM.
I have had a career in photography since I was 22. I went to the London College of Printing to actually do graphics. But I was far more interested in actually making the images than I was laying them out with type. And so a lot of my work as well was photographically based, although immediately after I left college, well, I went to St Martin's briefly as for a postgraduate course, and immediately after that, I carved out a career for myself in illustration, but using photography. So there was a lot of image manipulation with the work that I did, and it was kind of collage, if so to speak, but I never actually used any found imagery. I always took the imagery myself. I preferred it like that, and I realized that with printing from slides, that with Chrome, actually, I had my own Chrome darkroom up in Shoreditch. That anything that was black, I could reprint into, and so I used to do really quite complex prints that would take a couple of days or 2 or 3 days to do, with several up to 10 or 12 transparencies at a time. And of course, the work that went into that was really quite intense, because you had to keep checking whether the elements that you were putting into the black were actually in situation. So it was like Photoshop, right, but on paper, and done manually, way before computers. And so I attracted the attention of clients like New Scientist, various ad companies, all sorts, and I made a decent living out of that sort of style of photography. But also was always very interested in referencing and taking pictures per se. And of course, the darkroom was where I was most at home. Yeah, and of course, a studio as well. I did a hell of a lot of work in the studio. As time went by, I found that it was simply more lucrative to actually become a photographer rather than an illustrator, because I could then charge more per roll of the film or whatever, really crank up the expenses and stuff. So hence that's what I did. So I've always taught right throughout my career, all sorts of places, and most recently I've taught with Adrian at the LCT. Adrian was good enough to give me a part-time visiting practitioner post at the LCC, so that which was great. Yeah, and then when we had the studio upstairs, Adrian and I, and when that came to a natural end, simply because of the cost of it, I'd always got on really well with the guy who owns the building, an old boy called Morris. Almost treats me like a son. And he said, "Look, if you give me this back, this space, which was £60,000 a year at that point, which was we couldn't afford it. It was difficult to find that kind of money, and any money we did have was going straight into Morris's pocket. So he said, look, you can have the basements at a very reasonable cost. So I kind of bit his hand off for going at that particular time without a fuss. And when we came down here, it was like it was a natural darkroom, really. And so we came up with the idea of making it into a teaching establishment, and hence that's how SAIM sort of came about. But anyway, I won't steal the story because Adrian is really good at telling this.
Sounds great. Yeah, do you want to take over then, Adrian?
Yeah, my career in photography it's quite a long one and varied one, really. I mean, I sort of started in photography back in the late 60s, I suppose, and my career, of course, in terms of film, etc., was based mostly in film. And I was thinking, as Jacko was talking, of course, when I started in photography, we were mostly 80% of the work done was actually in black and white, not in color, and which is quite interesting. We talk now, we're always talking about the transfer from film to digital, but of course, a lot of my early parts of my career in the transfer from black and white into color, which is quite interesting, you know. And in fact, you know, my first jobs, not as an independent freelance photographer, but as an assistant, was spending a lot of time in the darkroom, making hundreds and hundreds of prints for PR companies. And I remember spending hours sitting in front of a big 24-inch rotary glazer, making sure that sort of like 500 prints were all perfectly glazed. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's basically if you were using traditional paper, of course, to get a gloss, you had to glaze the prints, and that meant they went round onto a chrome drum to come off glazed rather than unglazed, which today, of course, you get high gloss resin paper. So yeah, so from there, of course, my career went into sort of freelance photography and working right through the 70s and 80s. But I'd always done a little bit of teaching here and there when I was asked to, quite often as a guest sort of well-known working photographer, talking to different events. And then I'd always done a little bit at university and college, and eventually I wound up sort of being a sort of part-time lecturer at university, and became eventually course leader in the university, and I wound up running an MA course in LCC. And just before I retired, I wrote the new course that they're running called MA in Commercial Photography, which I felt was something that had always been lacking in the educational field, was a course that really dealt with people who wanted to go out and actually have a career in photography rather than necessarily be just fine art photographers. So my career in terms of where I worked had been in different varying studios I'd owned and run, and then eventually I met Jacko, and we worked together in the studio upstairs, as Jacko was saying. And when the Shoreditch phenomenon got to the point where the studio was going to cost us not far short of 200 grand a year to run, we thought we need to make some changes, and indeed we moved into the basement. And during COVID, which was, of course, a fairly changing period of time, we were sitting in the basement there thinking, there's a room full of junk at the back, why don't we turn it into a dark room? And photographers by nature tend to be hoarders, and we had a lot of equipment left over from our years of using sort of analog equipment, and so we started to work during COVID on building the darkroom. And as Jacko says, Jacko suggested that we maybe started to do some teaching and sort of introducing some younger generation to analog photography, because, you know, most people under 30 had not seen or used a roll of film, and that's really how SAIM came about and developed, really. And when I retired from university, I was able to put much more time and effort into working with Jacko on developing SAIM, and that's where we are now, really, sort of trying to develop as many different courses and offers as possible, but across the board, quite a lot of it based in analog, but some of it based in digital as well. And what we're developing, and why I'm in China at the moment, is we're developing sort of courses which will allow students from various parts of the world to come to SAIM and study for a week or a month or however long the courses that we're offering, you know, as I say, strongly based around sort of analog photography. So that's our sort of story to date, really.
Yeah, it sounds really interesting. So we have some slides, I think, to go through.
Okay, this is just a little presentation that we run on sort of just introducing people to SAIM, really. It's interesting, actually, that this is one of Jacko's concepts, the name, which I'm not sure. It stands for the Shoreditch Academy of Image Making, and the Jacko's slogan was the same but different. So we thought that quite a nice catch line for this one, actually. So that's where that came from. You know, again, I think it's a byproduct of COVID, sitting there staring at a wall for quite a number of hours and wondering, coming up with ideas. So that's where the name comes from. And if we move on, a little bit of history there showing that sort of, I mean, our basement, I mean, everybody thinks of basements as being fairly cramped and small. Well, actually ours is 2,500 square feet, so it's not so cramped and not quite so small. So it's a nice space, and we've made it, you know, quite sort of environmentally friendly, and it's got a nice buzz and atmosphere down there. So that's our actual space itself. And as we say there, we think the environment is that encouraged people to sort of be creative, and that's the vibe that we try to keep going down there. There we are, looking rather grinny, I'm afraid, but those are the three of us. The person who we've not mentioned yet is Niaz, who's another member of our staff. Niaz she's an ex-student of mine, actually, who studied with me quite a number of years ago and then went on to get her MA in photojournalism. She has a background as an English teacher, so we're able to sort of offer quite a wide range of subjects to some students who are interested in the more sort of theoretical side of photography. So we can sort of teach a lot of students about sort of theory and you know, critical thinking. I mean, when or if you watch this at a future date, you can actually read all that. But basically, there's just a summary of what Jacko said. And I think on the next slide, there's a summary of what I've had to say. Not such a wonderful grin, but let's move on again. And this Niaz's CV is there, or a short version of it. So again, when you get a moment to look at these in more time, you can actually see a little bit of her background as well. That's our place in Shoreditch, you can see there. And just to give an overview of sort of what the space is like. And if we move on to the next slide, we are located in Shoreditch, and obviously the surroundings and the atmosphere created in Shoreditch is quite conducive to sort of photographic environment in a sense, and there's a wealth of sort of backgrounds for photo shoots around there as well. This is our space, and as you can see, although it's a basement, it has got quite a nice atmosphere to it. On the left, you can see our major teaching room with a large picture on the wall by a good colleague of ours, Doogie Wallace, who also often comes and talks and teaches with us. And the other interesting thing is, you'll notice, is these makeup mirrors, because we do occasionally offer makeup courses, and if we have a shoot in the studio, we can overspill into here if there's a lot of models. So yeah, that's their major teaching space. A little more detail on the right, you can see we have large digital printers there, and obviously plenty of computers for teaching with on the digital side of things.
I'll be doing a walk around, by the way, when we finish this presentation.
So this is the area that's going to interest you guys probably the most, actually. This is a corner of our darkroom here, and you can see we've actually made, it's quite a reasonable sized darkroom. We've got half a dozen enlargers in there of various sizes, running from sort of 35mm right up to sort of the Devere, is it 508 we've got at the end there, you know. So a decent sized darkroom with a good range of enlargers and formats available to you. Again, coming back to our digital side, for those who sort of sometimes are interested in that, and of course a lot of people shoot film but actually like to scan it afterwards and digitally print it, so we can accommodate that. We have plenty of scanners, and we have these large 12 color Epson printers for some exhibition work as well. So plenty of facilities there for both digital and analog or analog to digital sort of processes. But we have got a studio downstairs as well, a small studio, which has got a green screen facility. You can see in the sideways slide the green curtains for green screening, and you can see there that we're actually doing a video transmission in that particular shot on the right. So a small studio which we use for sort of teaching general sort of studio photography. So a number of the students have passed through our hands have actually been young students who are applying for university places, and this is just a sample of some of them and how successful they've been here. And you can see this young student, Caitlin, she actually applied for university with some of the imagery that she's produced here, and was offered, got 3 offers in the end, I think. So that was quite encouraging. And if you can see some of the work on the left there, you can see we do like or encourage students to experiment with all sorts of areas of photography, and Jacko can explain in a little more detail. But certainly here we can see the use of liquid light and cyanotypes and various ways in which some of the young photographers really do like to experiment and you know, push the boundaries of work in the darkroom. So let's move on. There's another student here who's also worked pretty much with a lot of these liquid light experimentation, which is producing some really interesting results. And of course there's some hand colouring going on there as well. So again, all analog produced work, so very interesting stuff. I think that's one more photographer here. Yeah, this was Massimo, who works extensively in black and white and likes to sort of look at architectural aspect of photography. So again, here you can see all work produced in black and white in our dark rooms. And again, he was lucky enough to be offered places in American universities, which again, of course, is quite an achievement. So yeah, so quite a successful sort of outcome for some of the young students we've had working with us. Okay, so I think that's the end of that slideshow and just a bit of detail of the actual how to contact us just there.
So I think there was a few other topics that we were going to cover today as well. So I think we were going to talk about upcoming workshops that you've got. We wanted to discuss a little bit more about the role and importance of community darkrooms. And techniques for image manipulation and development methods. So did you want to talk a little bit about the importance of community darkrooms?
I mean, I'm a firm believer in the fact that, you know, this is a major craft, and you know, with a huge variety of skills to learn, and like pretty much like anything else, where, you know, it really is a going concern, and for places like us to exist is of paramount importance, really. I believe, and of course it does bring people together. It's a great shared experience for people, and it's the sense of creating is a wonderful thing to do. You know, it's better than sitting in the pub and drinking. But yeah, I mean, I can't stress how important it is enough.
Did you want to talk about techniques for image manipulation and development methods? Because I think when people think about darkrooms, they probably just think about developing their roll of film. But there's so many more things you can do.
I think the question, as I read it, said, "What's the quickest way to manipulate images?" And of course, immediately what sprang to mind is tilting the baseboard of the enlarger, or if you have something you can attach your paper to when you're printing, and you tilt that, then that will give you a manipulated image. And of course, the other one that sprang to mind is solarization, which is, you know, literally a light on, light off, and that's it. You know? And then you end up with a solarized image. So those are the two things that sprang to my mind.
I was just going to say, yeah, I think those are sort of quite good, sort of simple manipulative things. But of course, going back to what I was trying to explain in the slideshow there, you know, we can see that sort of things like the liquid light, which is not too difficult, and cyanotypes, and you know, even simpler than that, of course, is using photograms simply by putting, you know, images onto photographic paper and exposing it, you know, can produce some really fascinating, interesting results. And I think Jacko started with some of the young students that we had with simply making photograms from leaves and various things. And of course, that led on to sort of them wanting to do more, explore more in that particular region. So, yeah, manipulating in a simplest way can be very, very effective, really.
Yeah, it was Nyazi's group, and she does a lot with quite young children. Yeah, and she told them we were going to do these photograms and to bring an object, yeah, to make a photogram with. But of course, I don't think she explained very well that it might want to be sort of semi-transparent or transparent. And of course, one kid turned up with a Rubik's Cube. That's going to make a great photograph. So luckily, there had been a wedding upstairs, and there was all these flowers up there, and it absolutely saved our bacon. So we've just got all these flowers and lilies and God knows what, and made photograms out of them, and the kids were just wowed. You know, it was great. It was really good fun that day. Yeah.
So if I just go through some of the other questions as well that people sent in. So there's one that says, do you have any tips or advice for people wanting to start developing either at home or at SAIM?
I was thinking about this actually, and if you start to develop at home, one of your biggest problems is dust. Yeah, for actually drying the film. Okay, and so the one thing that worked for me was turning the shower on 5 minutes before you wanted to dry your film, and that would take all the crap out the air. Yeah, so you'd actually have a much cleaner air, and that would be better for you to hang your film in that environment and try and cut back on the dust. Really, that's the one that sprang to my mind anyway.
I mean, the one that I would say, I think, is consistency. I think when you're first starting out processing at home, or even, you know, with us, we notice with a lot of people, there's a tendency to sort of rush and not pay enough attention to detail, because if you're not consistent with your processing, then of course you've got no reference point to go back to. So unless you really make careful detailed notes about exactly what temperature you're using, exactly how long you develop your film for, whether it doesn't matter what, I mean, a lot of people say, oh great, it's come out, that's fine. But if what you want to know is, what if there was a fault with it, why it's got a fault with it, you know. And if you're not consistent, like, oh well, you know, maybe we're a little bit over on our dilution, or maybe we're a bit under, or maybe we do it for a bit too long, or the temperature's a bit high, it doesn't really matter because it's come out. But when you want to go back and achieve a consistent result or a good quality result, then you do need to be, or have all your sort of notes really made really accurately. And what I used to do when I started out in photography, working in sort of black and white even, was I'd always snip one of the negs off, or a little part of it, clip it in a notebook with all the details underneath of which developer, what dilution, and what time it was done for, so that you've got a nice reference to go back to. You've got your own technical journal, if you like. And that was really important, because the next time you did one and it didn't come out for some reason, you could always go back and work out why.
So for people that want to use a darkroom, or specifically your darkrooms, do they need any experience, or can they just come along and use them? Like, how do they do that?
Obviously, I think in the question that I read, it said, is it always manned, or are the people always around to help? And yes, certainly there's always people around. You don't need any experience at all. We can show you it all. You know, that's the whole idea. That's what SAIM's about, really, is encouraging people to come in and start making images.
Once somebody's been in the darkroom and sort of been through all the processes and understands the health and safety aspects of the darkroom, and becomes sort of a sort of trustee, if you like, so we get to know them, then of course we're happy for them to come in and sort of, you know, use the darkroom. That's really where we are. But I mean, obviously we want them to go through the process of the understanding the way our darkrooms work and the way our chemistry works. You know, you can't just come in without any experience and go straight into the darkroom. We would want you to go through one of our introductory courses to start with, just to pick up everything accurately.
Tony, do you have a question?
So on that point, would the best start point be, you know, with the introductory course that you have advertised on your website?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've got a couple of introduction to analog darkroom and sort of introduction to basic printing. Those are the things that you should really get under your belt, you know, before you start.
Because that's it. Although I've played around, I've got my own sort of homemade darkroom. I don't know if I'm doing it right. The images look okay, the prints come out okay, but yeah, it'd be nice for some proper kind of advice and guidance. Because other than, I mean, I've only picked up bits off of YouTube and things.
Yeah, sure.
The last sort of couple of years, so you know, I might be completely doing it wrong. That'd be, yeah.
Well, we'll hope to see you soon then, Tony.
Cool.
I think the same thing, Tony. I mean, how consistent are your results? Do you get very consistent results with your processing and printing?
And I've got to admit, that's when I first, because I'm quite kind of new to, I mean, I did play around with film when I was a kid years ago before digital. Obviously, I was around when film was around first, but I really wasn't that into it. It was just, you set it up to get it developed or whatever. But when I first started, I started on the, one of the Analogue Wonderland subscription boxes, which I think actually it was great, but I think it was the wrong thing to do because I was getting all this variety of different films and, I wasn't getting that consistency. So I've kind of picked that up from my mistakes really and just started buying a batch of, FP4 or whatever, and trying to stick with that and stick consistent with the developers as well, because I was playing around with different developers. But again, when I'm looking at the results, I mean, it's only me judging whether they're right or not. So it'd be good to, get an experienced eye, just to
I think that's
where you're going wrong, kind of thing. But,
I think that's what you pick up, isn't it? Once you sort of have got to the point where you know more or less what you know what a developer is, you know what a fixer is, and what they're supposed to do, and you get some results that are okay. But it's nice to be able to talk to somebody and say, well, is this okay, and is this a good result? And sort of that's where you get a degree of reinforcement, and it allows you to develop your own sort of style a little bit more, doesn't it? And to get your own take on the way you produce your imagery.
Yeah, definitely, because it's quite a costly process as well, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's also nice to be with like-minded people, Tony. And just a conversation that can spring ideas up and directions and all sorts. It's nice to be a part of something, really.
Yeah, definitely.
And some people who can actually, give a constructive criticism to your work and say, look, why don't you try this and that, can quite often be, a little something that suddenly starts something off in your mind that really, sets you on a different path or direction.
For progressing, for say, because although you've got the intermediate course there, so for that progression process, are there any kind of other courses available, or what would you suggest? Is it a matter of, renting a darkroom space and getting the knowledge from the staff that are on hand, or how would you kind of progress?
I think if you come and see us, Tony, we like to sort of do a sort of an assessment of you, if you like, and then we can say, look, this is where you are now. This is where you could be, and this is what we suggest you do to get there, Yeah,
okay, makes sense.
I mean, it isn't that easy to sort of say, oh, definitely do an advanced course or definitely do this, because we need to know where you are, at this point.
One thing you don't want to do is disappoint people, It's always a two-way street in that respect.
There's a tendency for people to say, oh, I don't want to do a beginner's course because I've done it all before. But then, when we do our introduction to, say, a camera, for example, we sit people down and talk about things like apertures and all the rest of it, and then say, well, why is f22 a smaller hole than f2 when you'd think it was the other way around? And we explain apertures and their relation. And all of a sudden people say, oh, light start coming on. They think, oh, right, yeah, I understand. Do you know what I mean? So although that is in our sort of beginners level, but a lot of people say, oh, I don't want to be beginners level because it's going to be below me, and I'm going to be people who not as good as I am. So it's always best to sort of come and let us sort of chat to you about how far you can.
There's no one who leaves that beginner's course actually who doesn't come away with like a solid understanding of the shutter speeds, apertures, depth of field, those kinds of things. It's quite interesting to watch the penny drop with people when they're finally they realize, oh my, right, okay, so that's a sliding scale, yeah. So we take them out and say, right, so we're exposing f8 1/2 of a second. What about if I switch that aperture to f4? What would the shutter speed be? Of course, they can work it out because it's on a sliding scale, yeah.
And when we explain shutters in 35mm cameras to people, and sort of say, well, when you synchronize it with flash, that dark line down the side of your picture, you photograph half your shutter coming across, and they go, oh, and all of a sudden they're beginning to realize how important syncing your shutter correctly with the focal plane. So yeah, there's always bits that people pick up on, even in, as I say, and that's all in the beginner's lecture. So
yeah, well, it is pretty thorough actually. Yeah.
When you do the beginners stuff, that so that goes through camera settings and all the way through to darkroom. And then do you always start with black and white? I can't remember if you have color as well in the darkroom.
We only really do color digital, don't we, Adrian? So
yeah, we don't have facilities for handling color at the moment, and the main reason for that is basically that color processing chemistry is very expensive, and unless it's being used consistently, you're replacing it all the time. So our fundamental thoughts were, look, if there's a big demand for color processing, then we can look at perhaps getting some color processing materials in. All the enlargers, not all of them, but majority of the enlargers are color enlargers, but of course we just haven't thought it's going to be worthwhile at this point to install color chemistry to allow color processing. So it's easier for people to scan, if they're doing color, perhaps to scan their negs. Well, they can come and scan their negs, but get their negs processed and then scan them and sort of do the rest of it with us.
And then, like, when you do your black and white courses, then do you always use the same emulsions, or because obviously with black and white there's so many different timings that are involved if people all shoot a different film?
Yeah, no, we generally throw a film in, don't we, Adrian? To be honest.
When we're doing the initial courses or the introductory courses, then we can provide a roll of film, because I mean, for example, on your introduction to cameras, the first sort of beginners workshop we'll start by running you right the way through the camera, how it works, all the functions of the camera. Then we send you out with one roll of film to go and shoot 24 or 36 exposures in black and white around the Shoreditch area. Then you come back, load that into a tank and process it. And that's usually takes up the first one-day workshop. So you wind up with a set of black and white negs. And we usually tend to sort of keep sort of a standard sort of black and white film in stock that we can give to the students, rather than if they bring their own, then we'll get a whole variety. As you quite rightly say, they'll all come in with, some will come with, I've got 500 ASA film, or I've got 50 ASA film, and then, which is fine, but it does mean that sort of if there's a group of people doing it, everyone's going to have slightly different times, and then sort of they will confuse each other, to be honest with you. So yes, basically we like to have a little bit of consistency among the students, so they're all doing the same process.
That's right.
In other words, the same film for the same length of time, etc.
So going back to some of the questions, someone had asked about film development on a budget. I guess the cheapest way to do it is at home with black and white, but do you have any other specific tips that you think people should know?
Again, consistent in what you do, you can work out how to best preserve your chemistry. So in other words, if you use your concertina bottles and sort of understand how's oxidization of chemistry, etc., you know, so that you don't have to keep throwing away your developer, and you keep notes on how many films you put through it. So things like that, you know, and, you know, understand that, you know, with fixers, you know, just keep using your fixer until you open your tank and your film's still got a little bit of milkiness on it. Then you go and buy some more fixer, because, you know, you're not going to, it's unlikely that your film is going to be damaged, or your film would have to be so your fix would have to be so exhausted before you hadn't actually stabilized your film. But of course, it may not clear the film, so then you've got to go and get some more fixer. So there are little ways, when you understand black and white chemistry, that you can, you know, reduce your cost of your chemistry to some extent, you know. And again, you know, if you look at sort of the films that you guys sell, you know, there are some films that are sort of budget films, and, you know, stick with those. You know, if you're consistent, there's no reason why you can't get good results off budget films, you know.
Jacko, if you had anything you wanted to show in the darkroom space.
Yeah. Why don't we do a little walkthrough? I've got my laptop.
Yeah.
Here we go. Here's the teaching space. You can see. There we have digital printers there on the Macs. And actually, this is something that we never talked about. Actually, we built a huge light box for people to chop up and sleeve their films on. So that's quite a nice thing. And of course, it's mirrored at the back there. So it's actually a really nice workstation, if you know what I mean.
That's a giant magnifier on there, by the way. So just to point out that isn't a normal size linen prover. It's a giant. Put the hand in there, Jack, so you can see how big it is. It's
huge. Can you see?
Oh yeah.
Of course, we've got our drying cabinets for film, a print finishing area here. So this is where you know, we might trim our prints or whatever. We've also got a Morzo there, which is a guillotine for chopping up frames. So we can actually frame prints, which is another area. We've not actually done any courses on it at all, have we, Adrian? But that's something we're really interested in doing. Is you know, from you know, taking a picture to actually taking it all the way to actually framing it. You know, framing a print. So you can see our wash area. We've got a dry mounting press there. All the enlargers. Yeah. There's some concertina bottles there, if for those who might not know what they are.
I've had one of those before. I always used to find though that it would unconcertina itself.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, you got to, the lid does really tight. You can see. And in here we've got our deep tank, which you can see there. Yeah. Of course, all the old stainless steel spirals at the back there. Oh, pretty. You know, it's like a mini college here. That's what we pride ourselves on here at SAIM, is the fact that you can, you know, wander into any discipline of image making and just get on with it. You know, I'll just go quickly take you into the studio. There we go. SAIM. I'll just stick this light on here quickly. So yeah, there's our green screen. That goes all the way around the room. So really useful bit of stuff that is when you're planning a project or whatever. So as we can see, we've got a lot.
Yeah, it's a really big space, isn't it?
Yeah. No. It's sizable. No, definitely.
Yes, Tony has another question.
Just curious, how does it work when it comes to, you know, your chemicals and things? Can you purchase them on site from yourselves, or are they included in if you hire a darkroom, you know, for a certain period of time? Does it include chemicals, or what? Or would I have to bring my own chemicals? How does that all?
I mean, if you're working in a workshop, then they would obviously be included. And if you come to use the darkroom, then we've got a little sort of like honesty box and say, look, if you're going to process a roll of film, just chuck a, you know,
Make a
whatever,
contribution.
just contribute towards the cost of the chemistry. We're not going to say it's going to cost you 20 quid to process
Yeah.
a roll of. If you want to drop, you know, a little bit of beer money in there, it's all right. You know what I mean? We don't really want to charge. You want to come and process 3 or 4 films. You know, that's not something we would do.
Funny
You know?
enough, George just texted me earlier and said, "Is it okay if his mate comes on Thursday to develop a roll of film?" And I assume he's going to want to do a scan of his negs as well. And I've suggested, well, give us a £5 in the box, and of course he's welcome. You know what I mean? It's no problem at all. And that was, you know, I mean, for a dev and scan, you're looking at what, about between £15 and £25, depending on where you go. So a great deal, isn't it? You know, but it all helps us to replenish our stocks. You know.
So I've never used a drying cabinet before, so I'm assuming it's a lot faster than just hanging them above your bath. Yeah.
I used to hang mine in the bath, and it would just, unless it was like a humid day or something, sometimes I'd be going in there for hours just going, is it done yet?
I've heard some horror stories over the years of people trying to dry films quickly, like old-fashioned tips, like, well, dip it in methylated spirits and put a light under it. You know, sort of thing, which if you're quick, you might be all right, but you know, I don't think health and safety or the fire brigade are very amused by that, you know.
Okay, well, if no one has any other questions, or is there anything else that you want to tell people about SAIM, or did you want to give a shout out to any of your courses that are actually available over the next month or so?
I mean, it's Easter. We were talking about this before we came on air, weren't we? About we're actually running the Analogue boot camp, which is quite an intense 2 days of analog photography and darkroom. Yeah, so that will be a good eye opener for people. That one, but again, it's over the Easter.
Actually, 1 or 2 that we have had quite successfully in the past, we've run them in conjunction with you guys at Analogue Wonderland. We've had a sort of day where you promote it through some of your guys, and everybody comes in, and that works quite well in a community way, because you've got a very diverse range of sort of clients or customers, and when they all come together with that common interest in sort of film and all the rest of it, they work really well, didn't they, in the past? We will talk to Amy about perhaps doing another one of those in the very near future, perhaps. And then we will also have another open day coming up, and they work quite well too, where people just come in, you know, look around, have a bit of a chat, and you know, a bit of a talk about aspects of photography. You know, those are all free, you know, and that helps generate a bit of sort of interest, and people can then ask more about. And when you probably noticed, as Jacko went out through the door, all of the different potential courses are all up with a QR code, so you can just sort of stick your phone up and get full details of the course you're interested in.
Do you know when the open day is? The next one?
We're trying to plan it for late April. Once
you have that on the site, just let us know and we can share that as well.
The other great thing about here at SAIM is, you know, it's sort of we're very welcoming, and having worked with lots of other private schools, you know, like Holger and Ion in Waterloo. I mean, it's the rigidity of their approach is laughable, really. You know, it's like they're so serious. You think they were teaching brain surgery, and of course, once that hand goes to 5 o'clock, it's like, right, off you go. You know, they don't hang out with you or talk to you or like, you know, talk about what it's like to be a photographer or what you're doing next or whatever. They're not sociable people, you know.
Yeah.
It always struck me. I thought, how the bloody hell do you get anyone even interested in this place, you know?
I guess it's like the name, isn't it?
Last question before I go. And this, I was thinking I'd join this personally, selfishly, for my interest and my hobby kind of thing. But I work for a fostering agency. And funnily enough, the lady that nearly interrupted me earlier works with our education department. Right. So she's one of our eagles. So and you'd mentioned about you've had schools in.
Yeah.
Do you do a program that's kind of focused at, I'm just thinking with the foster kids?
Well,
Is it something I could speak with them about? And
yeah, we could specifically tailor, because you know, if we're approached with a specific sort of demographic like that, then we could tailor something around that, couldn't we, Adrian?
We can, and of course, Niaz, who you saw earlier on in the presentation, Niaz runs a little group called Young Photographers London. If you look,
okay.
I think you look her up, Young Photographers London. Actually, she does a lot of work with very young photographic enthusiasts, and they go out regularly, shoot street photography, etc. So, and yeah, so working with Niaz around that concept of young photographers, we can offer, or we can tailor some workshops to suit, you know. So yeah, if you're interested, I think, you know, Niaz would be the one that would contact you and discuss how we can blend that with what she's doing into what we do at SAIM. So yeah.
Yeah, I'll have a chat with, I'll find out what she wanted, and I'll drop that in the conversation. You'd be interested to see.
Yeah, nice thing to do as well, Tony, wouldn't it?
Yeah, definitely, because it is about, it's getting younger people kind of involved, isn't it? You know, it isn't just digital that's out there as an option.
That's right, and you know, it's a lot about problem solving and you know, learning new things. So it's a great one, is photography.
I think the other thing that appeals to sort of like the youngsters is, of course, that it's not you know, photography, analog photography is not a screen-based technology, isn't it? So they're doing something that they're physically involved in, that's got smells and not taste, smells and feels, and you know, it's not sitting in front of a flat screen again. So physically, there's things for them to do, and they see prints and things emerging from a dish and stuff like that. You know, so really fascinating for young people. You know,
because you've been doing it so long, you forget the magic moment of when you know, a print's coming up in a tray. You know, it's you know, you forget the first time you saw that. Really, how amazing that is. You know.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for your time.
I would encourage you to get in touch, Tony. Definitely.
Yeah. No, will be.
Thanks so much, everyone.
That was great. I really enjoyed that.
Good.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.